So tonight we're continuing our series on self-transformation, and this is session 6, which is looking at Buddha Yoga, part 3, which is Dhyana Yoga or meditation. So I'll just recap what we did in the last session. So last session was Dhyana Yoga, which is the direct perception of a specific and unique object in its suchness. So it's having that deeper perception and insight into the nature of reality. So the yogi sees everyone or everything as one, as Brahman, that, the divine. For that to happen, there needs to be communion, if you like, something that happens in a sacred exchange between ourselves and the divine, which is in a state of love. So in the Gospel of John, which is one of the key texts we were studying, there was a story, a parable about a Samaritan woman who'd gone to a sacred well on a mountain to seek to quench her thirst, and she met Jesus there, and he was engaging with her, and the disciples came back from their work, and they saw this sacred exchange going on between the Christ and this seeker. So they stayed quietly away for a while and didn't interrupt that exchange until it was over and the woman left and went back down into the town. So that sacredness is something that has to happen in a different state from what we're normally operating in our daily life. Related to that was Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, Pratyahara, which was withdrawing of senses from the objects. So this is one of the fifth limb in the 8 limbs of yoga of Patanjali, the outer limbs. So it was essentially, if we want to have insight in Dhyana Yoga and have a deeper insight into the nature of reality, then we need to be able to tune inward. So that's what we covered last week, and it's up on the YouTube channel. Okay. So Dhyana Yoga, meditation, is the 7th limb in Patanjali system. So we have the first 5, and then we have the last 3, which are the inner side. And these last 3 are looked at together, which is what we're going to look at tonight. And the first of those 3, which is Dhyana, which is translated as concentration. So there's concentration, meditation, and samadhi. So Patanjali gives a definition there. It is concentration, or dhyana, is the uninterrupted flow of awareness towards the object of attention. Now, HPB goes a little bit further in the Voice of the Silence, and essentially emphasizes it's a superphysical experience. Now, Ernest Wood wrote a book on concentration and approach to meditation, and he gave 36 exercises to help you concentrate as part of meditation. When I was younger and doing those exercises, those states occurred in terms of being focused within. There is no awareness of the external universe that HPB is talking to. But if you practice concentration, you go into these inner states, which is what we're going to look at tonight as well, in terms of Patanjali and what he's explaining, because there's varying degrees of awareness. Again, Patanjali gives the definitions of meditation is the uninterrupted flow of awareness towards the object of attention, and then samadhi, where the state where the self is not, and there's only awareness, as opposed to any form of duality of what is being focused on. So dhyana, or concentration, is akin to a flashlight focusing on one particular object, if you're in a dark room, as it were. And Ravi Ravindra talks about it as the warrior phase. So it's that active focus on using the body to concentrate, directing one's will. Meditation, or dharana, is akin to illumination of the room. So it's looking at the relationship of the parts to the whole. So concentration, we're focusing on something, and then with meditation, there's an illumination. And that is the feminine process of meditation. So there's the warrior phase, or the active phase, and then there's the passive phase, the receptive phase during meditation. Being available or surrendering to something more subtler is part of one's practice. We're receptive to finer and finer energies. So Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita essentially gives a definition there about controlling the self, focusing on the self, controlling the mind without expectation and without grasping. So it's being able to concentrate and then come back to the self and be still. So in the sense, this focus on meditation from these two texts, Gita and Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, are giving you the classical definition. So in meditation, there are, walking meditation, lots of other types of meditation, which is fine. What I'm sharing from these texts is what you might call the classical definition, the skeleton of meditation, because it's an internal process. And the Bhagavad Gita, for example, gives you, which we'll look at a bit later, gives you some general instruction, but nothing specific can be given, because really it can't be taught. You have to have a true adept or a master to help you with that, because you're going into subtler and subtler states of consciousness. And a lot of the sages, for example, Krishnamurti talked about his process that he used to go through. And Ravi Ravindra, my teacher, spent 20 years with Krishnamurti. He was going on about this process. Similarly, if you think about Ramana Maharshi, who was silent for many, many years after his awakening. So there's an inward focus of coming to terms with that change in consciousness, which changes our whole psyche, which we'll get to look at shortly as well. Okay, so in the Yoga Sutras, there's this idea of samyama, or total attention. And it combines concentration, meditation, and samadhi, all three of those inner limbs of Patanjali's system. And samyama, total attention, is a state of pure consciousness, emptied of ego, but full of purusha, or spirit, or conscious energy. So it allows us to have a direct insight into the nature of reality. It's totally focused. And what we looked about earlier in terms of Patanjali, about the vrittis and the kleshas, the movements of thought and the components of the mind, these three, concentration, meditation, samadhi, are concerned with the quietening of the movements of thought, which is akin to the software of consciousness. All of our movements are relative to each of us. Whereas what we're going to get to in a moment is the hardware of consciousness is essentially fundamental to the human condition. And all the sages transform themselves in terms of that software and hardware in terms of consciousness. So there's a radical transformation. The movements of mind stop, but also the core components of our psyche are transformed. So the structure of consciousness, or the hardware of the mind, is concerned with the mind's transmutation. So it's a total reorientation, a total transformation of our psyche, as opposed to what we normally think about on a daily basis, which are the movements of thought. And it has 3 stages. So Naroda Parinama is a transformation towards silence. So these 3 stages involve different degrees of silencing of the mind, if you like. So there's outer impressions, and yet there can be some silence as well. So Samadhi Parinama is a transformation towards realization. So there's a gradual settling of the distractions in the mind, as well as one-pointedness. So if you read some of the sages like Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj in some of his teachings, I Am That, there's a book in the library. He talks about, people have asked him about how come can you live in the world? Like a few weeks ago, we talked about the 3 gunas, and the body can do what it needs to do, but at the end of that work, there's silence. The mind just comes back to being still, and there's a center on something deeper that's bubbling up in one's consciousness. So the seers are able to engage, do what they need to do, and then come back and be still. So the second stage here is a focus on that. Whereas in the final stage, Grata Parinama is the transformation towards one-pointedness, where there's activity and silence equally balanced. So one can do what one ultimately needs to do with the body, the gunas, and then be still the rest of the time. And Ramana Maharshi calls that abiding. So he will do what he needs to do, but he always remains silent in his own state of self-awareness. So this purpose of going deeper and deeper, and the purpose of yoga, is to free us from the misidentification of the seer, of ourselves with the movements, or awareness of consciousness with the contents of consciousness. So the mind operates, it does what it does, but we don't identify with it. There's something else within us of which we are. And so essentially Patanjali is talking about, in quite in depth, and you have a look at the text, that there's degrees and degrees of silencing of the mind and thought. And if you think about it in terms of, you have in the Christian tradition, which is analogous to the Hindu and the Buddhist traditions, you have the birth, the baptism, transfiguration, the crucifixion, and the ascension. They all symbolize deepening levels of consciousness with the self, with the one. So gradual silencing of the mind, and what is there, the divine within us, coming out more and more and more into one's consciousness on a daily basis, in daily life. So there's a couple of examples here, and Ali, when she gave her talk on Gurdjieff, quoted Henrietta Lanes, was talking about Gurdjieff, how he was focused, he had calmness and energy, and he was like a cat or a tiger. So he had that full attention, he was in full self-awareness of himself, self-knowledge, and that just came through him. Now, Sri Ram, who was our 5th world president, who's been in this hall, some of the older members like Diane Mawson and stuff who were here when he arrived, they said the same thing about him. He had this energy about him, something was coming through him more than any other human being they'd run into. Similarly, Ravi Ravindra was walking with Krishnamurti, and he was having some deeper insights and just talking about that with Ravi, and he asked Ravi, do you think the speaker is a freak? Because his mind was totally different. And this is the whole idea about this process that went on with Krishnamurti as he got older. Deepening levels of awareness of the self, the one. So In terms of meditation, it's a transmutation. It's a shift to have deepening levels of awareness and insight and understanding. And these are primarily in the superphysical realms. Because if you think about the definition of dhyana or concentration, it is about going totally within. So there is freedom from the external world, as HVB says. So it's a totally internal process, and this is what Patanjali is talking about in quite in depth in his book on the Yoga Sutras. So a good result of meditation or any spiritual practice as part of that, because you have service, study, and meditation all combined, is to have equanimity. If you're getting wound up quite a lot, your meditation practice may not be doing what it's meant to be doing. But then you need to also incorporate the other aspects of Buddha yoga that we've talked about so far, karma yoga, jnana yoga. Because in Patanjali's system, again, you have the observances, the yamas and the niyamas, the restraints and the observances, what you need to do, which is akin to the Buddhist Noble Eightfold Path, doing right livelihood, etc., the Christian commandments. So we need to have, as part of our spiritual practice, which is corporate meditation, some of the ethics and how we operate as well. Because which we'll get to shortly, the dangers of meditation, if we don't have that equanimity in the first place, which comes through our service that we're doing to others in our daily life and our study and application thereof. So Krishna is advising that there in that quote. Similarly, from the Christian tradition, it's about love and having that equanimity. And there are different degrees of love required by the disciples, to love their neighbors, to love their enemies, to love one another. So again, it was quite hard for the disciples to undertake the teaching of Christ, because his teaching was with transformation, was with fire, as it was talked about in the gospel, the total dissolution of the ego of ourselves. And there was a scene in the gospel around the Christ washing the disciples' feet, which is a symbol of unity between the masters and the disciple, that both are the same. There's none higher and lower, but they both serve something much greater than themselves. So to be able to do that, which is what we said at the introduction to the course, we have to be integrated. When we're integrated, we can make a sacrifice, and then we can do what is required in terms of Dharma and what is required of us in connection with something higher. So that requires equanimity on a daily basis. So again, we've got another theme here that we've touched on in the last couple of sessions, vairagya and abhasya, non-attachment and practice. So obviously Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita is asking about how to control the mind, which is difficult, obviously, and it's through practice and dispassion. So there's the masculine and the feminine aspects, if you like, the positive and the negative. We focus on our practice, but at the same time we're receptive to something higher and being detached from what keeps us from having a deeper insight. So there's always a twofold. It's like the coin with two sides. There's a focus on what is necessary and a detachment from what is not necessary. And this is all through, it's from the Bhagavad Gita, it's in Gospel of John in terms of what he's teaching them to do and put aside. It's in the in Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and it's in other texts as well, like Cyril Scott, the Initiate series. He again talks about it in there. And so from a lot of the key teachings in Theosophy, this is the practice that we need to think about. And last week we talked about it with at the end with Ramana Maharshi and what he was saying in terms of self-inquiry, who is the I that's thinking all of this, plus self-surrender to the one. So there's always a positive and the negative. So the view is, and this is the view for all of Ravi Ravindra's commentaries on these three texts, is the body is required. We need this body for the self to transform, that particle of divinity in us to evolve. So this is the irony, right? The paradox, a strong personal self is required to get rid of the self. During manifestation, the outflowing from the source, individuality is emphasized. On the return cycle, unity is emphasized. So on the one hand, we have to develop a self in order to get rid of it. The irony of the fact, but that's just how it is. So it's necessary to realize that and not think that this body is not useful for anything, can go off and run off to the Himalayas or something like that. So when the real I appears, ego can find its right place, becoming a centered self that can act without being self-centered. And that's Ravi's commentary on that. But he got that essentially from Madame de Salzman, his teacher, who was, Gurdjieff's, took over the work when Gurdjieff passed. So there's some general instruction on meditation. So you want to be able to be physically relaxed in a quiet place. You want to straight back. You want to relax your mind, your emotions, your eyes, everything, because you're going to go within internally. It's an internal process. So in the Bhagavad Gita, there's some general instruction for that, but there's nothing else that is given. And the same with Patanjali as well. He's talking about the different states and awareness, but real instruction comes from within. Because once the initial guidelines are undertaken, you are going within and having a connection with the one, which is an internal process. So there's some standard guidelines given in the Bhagavad Gita there. So akin to those guidelines is what Jeffrey Hodson also gives in his little textbook on yoga, on meditation, called A Yoga of Light. So he again offers it as preliminary guidance, although we have to find our own way. So some kind of guidance may be helpful, might suit you, but if it doesn't, you find something else. So he was emphasizing the goal of meditation is to find that we are divine and that we are part of the one life and not our bodies, mind, emotion, physical. So we've covered earlier in the course in terms of the 7 components of the human being. There's the personality, the soul or individuality, and the spirit. And there's a link in terms of consciousness between the personality and the soul. So the personality is just Joe Blogs, will die, pass away. Soul will continue and reincarnate until eventually it is absorbed at the end of the cycle of human evolution into the one in full consciousness of our true nature and what we really are. In the Christian tradition, become perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. So Jeffrey Hodson's practice and meditation is taking us within in this theosophical framework. So you go within, you go to the soul level, and then you go to the spirit level, and then you come back down. So here. So essentially the start from the bottom is preparation in this practice and guidance that Jeffrey Hodson has given. So you're relaxing your body, being calm, and then you focus on the soul level. I'm not mind, I'm the spiritual self. And then you move to identifying with the one life. I am that am I. So that's an interiorization. You go within. And then on the way back, which is the downward arrow, you come back out from that interior experience. So you bring the center of awareness back into the formal mind, back into the emotions, back into the physical body. And repeated process opens up those links between personality and soul, and between soul and spirit, in addition to our daily practice and our daily life in terms of our study and our service. So everything is complementary: study, service, meditation. So it's an interior, again, it's an interior focus. I'm going within, then coming back without in a safe way. Now, also some similar instruction is given by HPB, which is a diagram of meditation. So if you think about practice and dispassion, the positive and the negative, again, her diagram is emphasizing that it's the acquisitions, what you focus on, and the deprivations, what you let go. Now, Pablo Sender from the American section, if you look up HPB's diagram of meditation of Pablo Sender, you'll find a couple of YouTube sessions that Pablo has done on the diagram of meditation. It's very, very good because he's quite involved in it. So yeah, and he's written, he's done stuff on it on the internet, so that's fine. And you can find it in the American section website as well. But if you do his YouTube, search on Google the Pablo Sender and this diagram of meditation of HPB's, you'll find some stuff on it. So I'll leave that for you to have a look at, because I just gave some handouts tonight and emailed those online, but you can find it online as well. And it was given to E.T. Sturdy, who was a Wellington member, who was part of HPB's inner group, who dictated and drew this up from her inner group. So yeah, it's thinking about reality as one, etc., and not thinking of reality in another way. So there's that practice and dispassion. So that's a common theme in terms of all of our approach to our spiritual life, and including meditation. Okay, some warnings. Sri Krishna Prem, in his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, the Yoga of the Bhagavad Gita, is very good. And Ravi Ravindra, in his commentary that we're studying as part of the course, quoted Sri Krishna Prem, and this is what he said: "Nothing but dangerous and neurotic disassociations of personality can result from the practice of meditation without a great deal of prior preparation and purification of our motives, lifestyle, and the like." So again, it's about having everything else wrapped around meditation: service, study, and all of the ethics, and all of the other kind of guidelines that you have in spiritual teachings. You've got the Eightfold Noble Path in Buddhism, for example, right livelihood, right thinking, etc. So this is very, very important. Again, Krishna is emphasizing in chapter 5 in those verses around removal of evil, free from all desires and fears, etc. And Ravi sums it up in terms of conscience is related with higher feelings and consciousness with higher intelligence. If we're going to have some deeper insight, we have to have the conscience to go with it. There's no higher consciousness or deeper awareness of consciousness without conscience. So these are some of the warnings given. And my old teacher, John Sell, who was the father of the current national president, Richard Sell, he told me this many years ago. When I first joined, he said, "Purification before illumination." Now, there's a quote by Bulwer Lytton and Zanoni: "Water poured into a muddy well does but disturb the mud." And Blavatsky, again, gives a little bit of a poetic warning in terms of, in the voice of the silence: "Beware lest thou shouldest set a foot still soared upon the ladder's lowest rung, the ladder that leads to life eternal. Woe unto him who dares pollute one rung with miry feet. You know, in the early days of society, a lot of people were put to the test. They were asked, "Oh, the society won't continue unless we become disciples, etc." Because there was permission given the first 7 years of the society about phenomena and Mahatmas appearing and all the rest of it. Mahatma leaders, everything. There's lots of stuff going on, but they were warned not to rush into adeptship, into celliship, into discipleship, and those that really moaned the loudest were put to the test, and they all failed. Because Blavatsky said they're all rotten to the core, outwardly socially acceptable, but rotten to the core within. There was debauchery, theft, murder, suicide, the whole shebang, everything. So we're put to the test, ultimately. So don't rush in. So these are some of the warnings as part of the spiritual life. And as Ravi says, it's all very well to want the truth, but we have to be able to withstand it. Otherwise, you run into people who you might call a little bit neurotic or delusional or whatever it might be, based on some kind of practice they might be doing or something. So it's always about being stable and calm and serene and balanced. Then one can withstand the truth. So that's all I formally have to present. Happy to have some chat discussions. Here we are. Sorry, what's it about?
Spotlight. The rest of them can use the.
Okay, so move spotlight. Good. Okay, I've got some questions in the chat. I'll go to those. Oh gosh, did you listen to that echo all the way through then, Esther? My apologies.
No, not you, Simon. Just before we started, the conversation in the meeting room was very echoed. No, you were fine. It's just the mic into the meeting room.
Oh yeah, Blake says we're fine. Okay, good.
Yeah, no, excellent.
Yeah, Ismay.
Yes, I just something ran with me. I was talking to a friend this morning, so that it was very interesting that you brought it up with talking about Dhyana yoga, but you quoted love thy neighbours as yourself and love thy enemies, and then love one another as I have loved you. And the talk I was part of this morning was we were talking about love thy enemies, and the great misconception about love thy enemies is that you think it's people around you or your neighbour or someone down the road, but it's actually not referring to people. It's actually referring to the enemies within yourself, and it's referring to the obstacles that that prevent you from purifying yourself to be able to continue your journey. So, and obstacles can be all sorts of things. It can be jealousy or whatever it is, but we concluded the whole point of it is that if you love these obstacles and appreciate them, that they are showing you the way to helping you get rid of them. But like boulders in the stream, you're trying to get rid of the boulders out of the stream so it can flow naturally and swiftly. So it's appreciating the obstacles within yourself, and that's your enemy. And if you appreciate it, love it, and it helps you get rid of it.
Did everyone hear that online? Good. Okay. Yeah, it's oh, yeah, there's another chat. Oh yes, Blake, yes, good. Yeah, our work is hard because it's the total transformation of the whole human psyche, and it's going to take lifetimes. But whatever we do in this time, it's with us. Nothing is ever lost. So any progress we make is with us forever, so to speak. And the Mahatmas have said, the teachers have said that even though outwardly we may not be seen to be making progress, inwardly there's lots of stuff going on. We just have faith and trust in the law that everything is going according to plan, as it were. But then we're also, it's up to us what we do with our life. Where do we give our energies? Do we make some time for meditation? Make some time for study? You've got to go to work, etc. All of that. So it's how you live. And if we can have a balanced approach, then everything is actually, we're quite integrated. And this is what the whole session on the whole teaching and self-transformation from the Bhagavad Gita especially is around Buddha yoga, that combination of karma yoga, jnana yoga, Dhyana yoga, meditation, and bhakti yoga, devotion and love. So all of that combined transforms us in a well-balanced and well-rounded way, all components of ourselves. And that's the key thing. Even though it may not appear much is happening on the outside, there's a lot of stuff going on the inside. And it's a lifetime process, right? I mean, I've been at it, 34 years. Who knows, whether I've learned anything or not. But, it's, and it's a great thing. It's like a little adventure. It's our own inner adventure. But as I said from the, quoting the Mahatma from the Theosophist, the latest edition, we're doing it collectively as a group, and then we support each other, which is really cool. Because how else can we create a nucleus of universal brotherhood, as it were, if we don't all support each other and share and that? So, yeah, fantastic. Okay, here we are. Blake. Oh, yeah, okay. God said, love your enemy, and I obeyed him and loved myself. That's from the prophet. Ganesh was said to love our neighbour, as it is very easy for me to love all those who are unknown to me and far away from me, but not those who are very close to me in my house or workplace or other common meeting groups, personal view. Well, that's the whole point, exactly. We get tested where we are. So if your focus, and it has been for me, I've been, Divine has been working through this body for 34 years in this organization. A lot of my challenges have come in it, which is understandable, right? This is why my focus is. A lot of people in their careers go to the top of the ladder, so great, they have their challenges there. So wherever our energy and focus is where we're going to get tested. So yeah, absolutely. It's easier to love those you don't really interact with much than those that you do.
Yeah, I'm thinking about what Esme just said, when you come across these stumbling blocks, and maybe it depends on the way you look at it. Is it a stumbling block or a mounting block to step up?
Oh, very good, June. A mounting block or a stumbling block. Yeah, step up. Well, that's the thing. It's about opportunities, right? This is an opportunity for self-transformation. And Sushma tells me you never get, this is very, very good karma to come to this place, right? And the fact that it exists and all the work that has gone on for generations of members, particularly the founders who toiled for many years to make it happen. So, we should feel fortunate. June, Louise.
We have these ideas of, and there are only implicitly, I suppose, of bad and good. It's right to do this and right and wrong. And I think there's I've done it quite a lot. I used to drive down the road and it was going on inside of me. There was the good on the side, it's sort of a moral thing in a way, and the bad on this. And somehow I knew that I had to both of them. Both were serving some purpose. And I had to not see bad as bad. Not that our values are anything we thought you could say it's an evil power system. But you have to accept accept it, not judge it. And then that gives you the mastery over it and you and your thinking and what you're thinking in you. And then I think it loses its negative power, if you like. But it somehow, I don't know, it just makes it things come to better. But we have a huge fear of evil, we said evil, and it's all been put down to us spiritually, if you like, in the past. And I think we need to see this as not like that and make it welcome. A little bit like I think Ethan was saying, make it welcome. And really, I think it will disempower itself from being bad and it will become clear. That's how it started. Everything like inside properly, because you come along with all your preconceived present, thinking, and what do you do from there? Because you have this. And and I don't know, I just tried not to think of things as wrong as opposed to right. And it's made a difference. It means that it's made things more clear to me.
Okay, everyone heard that online?
No, no.
Okay, so Louise was talking about our perception in relation to what Ismay was saying and how we view things, not cut and dried as right and wrong. And if you do that, can have a deeper perception and control yourself and have more awareness. And it's a little bit being a bit more detached about things and go a little bit deeper. So it's not controlling you all the time. So try not to be so judgmental in terms of what is right and wrong. And if you think about what, in the previous slide, Krishna was talking about equanimity, the yogi is calm and serene in success and failure between right and wrong. So, yeah. Okay, Barry, you might have to speak up, mate.
Try best. Purification before elimination.
Can you hear that online, team?
No,
Okay, all right.
no,
Just come
can't
up,
hear.
come up.
Yes, okay.
Barry's coming up. Grab a seat there, mate.
The purification before elimination, the quote which really got the attention. So, nothing but dangerous neurotic associations of personality can result from the practice of meditation without a great deal of prior preparation, purification, motive, lifestyle. So, I think I get the quote. I was thinking about examples, really. And there are some possible examples come to mind, but examples when anybody may want to share of it. It's
Okay.
not my understanding of this.
We had a former member years and years ago in the society who was basically thought he was Jesus Christ. Okay. Now, my landlord at the time, who's passed away, he was having a conversation with them and said, yes, but I'm also Jesus Christ. But do you see, one was on a totally different level. Charles, my landlord, was saying, well, we're all one, we're all part of the Christ consciousness, we're all that. Whereas this guy was at a totally different lower level saying, well, I'm the one right here in this physical body and, I'm it. That was an example of some delusion that I've come across personally in this organisation over the years. Some others might have some examples, but that's the gist of it. It's like...
Yeah, I've got an example.
Okay, go, Chris.
Yeah, in my early years, we had a member who had studied shamanism and also experimented with some of the practices. After a time, it became apparent that the man was quite seriously damaged, and he went on to create some very worrying situations. And I concluded that it wasn't that there was something wrong with studying shamanism or even experimenting with some of the practices. It's your intention. And the man was very, very big on ego. And I think that's something that we have to remember. Any of these practices that you're talking about, we should always have the intent of progressing. That's fine, but we mustn't get it confused with, and at the end of the day, I'll feel very important about my progress. We have to always be wary of that ego that pops up. That's all I have to say.
Okay, Ganesh. Oh, yep.
Thank you, Simon. Just to add to that one, in the 1980s and 70s, in the US and other Europe, there was a method called the silver mind control method. Some of you might have heard, I think elderly members. In that particular course or the book, one thing they said was, do not think that you want to create a headache to your boss, because if you think like that, you will be the one who will be getting the headache.
Yes.
What I used to say to my children about that is, if you throw one boomerang, 3 come back. And that's what the Wiccans call the rule of 3. So you give your boss a headache, you're going to get one 3 times as bad, because it's accumulated all the boss's energy on the way back to you.
Is that
I'd like to say something else. Can I speak again?
Yeah, go.
Yeah, I'd like to share something that I heard Radha Bernier say many, many years ago when she was speaking in Auckland. And I was quite a new member, but she made one comment that really struck me. She said, be careful what you wish for, because the gods may be listening. It made an impression on me and it stayed there.
Does that answer your question, Barry?
A number of times, yes. Yeah.
I can also add something, Simon.
Yeah, go, Blakey.
Here we go. Hello, everyone.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, Blake.
Good to see everyone. Yeah, I also added in chat, there's a popular fable around exactly this question of Fantasia. It goes back to an old German fable. It's popularly depicted by Disney as Mickey Mouse, you know, Fantasia, where he steals spells from the wizard and it goes horribly wrong and everything starts flooding and the brooms start having a life of their own. So this is a fable of messing in magic and mysticism when you're not prepared, because the master could use the spells properly, but the apprentice, the sorcerer's apprentice, was not prepared to delve into that kind of deep magic. And there's a big cost of delving into certain truths and certain practices when you don't have a proper guidance and you don't have a proper preparation for that magic. So the fact that this is a very, very old story, that Disney just redid it essentially, shows that this is a warning and something that goes back time immemorial. So it's a very good point to keep in mind in a spiritual path.
Awesome, Blakey. Great. Guys, all good. Oh, someone's phone's ringing. Yeah, so any other comments, thoughts, questions? Anyone else? Yeah, it's great. It's an integrated approach. And, you know, don't rush. We've got all of eternity and things will unfold naturally. There's the activity, the focus, And then there's that receptivity when things will bubble up naturally as a result of the work that we've done. So it's always the balance between practice and dispassion. Great. I'll just check the chat. Oh, yeah, Blake was talking about what he just talked about. Yep. Okay. Pam, you might have to come to the front.
I just wanted to say when you're trying to love your enemies, it's often easier to cope with those challenges than the people nearest to you, like your family and friends who push buttons because they're closer and more obvious. I think they can be more of a challenge. Enemies. Not to really anyone particular.
No, absolutely.
We couldn't hear that online.
They couldn't hear.
Okay, so Pam was talking about the people you're close with push your buttons. And that's, you've got to be aware of all that. Okay, Sush, go.
Well, I'm wondering if this is about Dhyana, yoga and meditation. And in the context of love thy neighbor and love your enemies, if you haven't sorted out with the enemies, every time you sit in meditation, they're going to come up.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
going back to what Esme said, we have enemies because we have blocks inside us, isn't it? The obstacles are within. That's why you perceive someone as enemies, and they have blocks, so they think you are an enemy. So until you resolve things within you and love them, whether they love you or not is irrelevant. But if you can love them, then you're free. Maybe that's what Jesus meant of love your enemies. We have to look at the context where he said it.
Well, yeah, because who is the I, as Maharshi and all that would say, who is the I that's not, who's got the blockage, There's still an I, the ego, the me there, that's not, it's comparing and going, you guys are not really the best, but you guys are the best. So, got to get rid of both sides of the coin, as it were.
Well, on my pilgrimage, I learned one thing. The way people treat you doesn't reflect on who you are, but who they are.
Okay, Maureen, no man is your enemy, no man is your friend. All alike are your teacher to learn from. Mysteries to solve even. Yes. Well, that's the practice. If we're all one, but we perceive as others who are not so nice, you guys are one, but you guys are not one because you guys have crossed me. I mean, that's our test, right?
You guys are sadly one with me.
Yeah.
It's tragedy, but it's true.
Okay.
Okay, 8 o'clock.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to, okay, so I will formally close the session and turn off the recording. So thank you, everyone.